Hello, everyone. I promised y'all I would be back to talk about altars, so that's going to be today's topic. Today, we're going to talk about altars. We're going to talk about ritual, the science, the dangers, the correct use, the misuse, all of that stuff, right? Uh, but before we get into that, I want to share a few announcements with y'all. So, coming up, there are two major events I want to let y'all know about. So, first, we have uh, in the Houston area, January 18th, we're going to be hosting a healing, deliverance, and impartation service. Well, meeting, let's say it that way. This is not a church service by any means. This is a gathering, community service event for the council that I'm a part of. We're going to be giving back to the community. This is a way of us being able to help those in the community who have needs. So if you're in need of healing, if you're looking for breakthrough, if you're looking for empowerment, show up. This is not a fundraiser. We're not going to raise an offering. This is simply to help people who need help and be of service to the community. That is January 18th. Now, next, right after that, the day after, actually begins my healing class. The Healers Masterclass. This begins January 19th. Last day to sign up for it is the 18th. This is for those of you who want to learn how to heal the sick, how to cast out devils, how to be of benefit to your surroundings. Many of us have gotten tired of being helpless, hopeless, powerless in situations that require healing, whether that be our own life or that be other people having needs that require healing. So that's what I'm going to be covering in this course. It is done by me. Every session will be recorded. So if you miss a session or you're not actually able to make it for when we do the live training, uh, you'll still have access. Anyone who buys the course will have access to all the recordings. You'll be able to watch it as much as you want. You have it forever. Um, but this is training for those of you who want to learn how to heal the sick and want to learn how to heal yourself, want to learn how to never be sick again. The science behind it so that you can replicate it and you can be of benefit. Everyone hates those moments where a loved one or yourself really needs help, and it seems like all the things that you were taught are not working. I hated that, which is why I wanted to learn how to heal. I've done that. I've had a successful healing ministry over the last almost decade now, getting thousands, close to around the tens of thousands of results over the years. So this is something that works. If you're interested, sign up for that is on my website, schooloftheempire.com, or you can access all of this stuff through my main website, caveofmystery.org. So that's enough for the announcements. Let's talk about altars. So let me start off by asking the question of what is an altar? An altar is a point of contact. That's the main thing with an altar. It's a point of contact between two parties, between two entities. For example, everyone that's watching this is using the internet. Whether you're using home internet or you're using your mobile data, however you're watching this, it requires internet. So the internet would be the entity. Well, the altar by which to tap into the internet and spread its influence in your vicinity is called a router and a modem. Now, phones kind of have it built into them, but if you're at your house, you see you have this altar set up. Now, understand that altar does not mean a place of worship. It means a place of contact. It's a point of contact, meaning that this is here as a means to funnel something in and possibly be a place in which it can be engaged. There's a gentleman who I've seen some of his talks, some of his lectures. He's a brilliant guy. I believe, hopefully, I don't butcher the pronunciation of his name, but his name is Dandapani. Might have butchered that. And he's a Hindu man. Seen very few of his lectures, but I remember in one of the first ones I saw, he has these marks across his forehead. And when he was opening up, he said, okay, let me answer this before, I know it's on your mind. Many of you want to know what these lines are on my forehead. Think of it like Wi-Fi, right? So even in that, him being able to paint himself or decorate himself in that way was acting as a point of contact for higher levels of wisdom, higher levels of knowledge, greater levels of consciousness, so on and so forth. So understand that an altar is not a place of worship. It's not even always a place in which to get in contact with God or a deity or a spirit. It is simply a point of contact in which something can be funneled in and engaged. You can see telephone booths from way back in the day as an altar. It's a place in which you can go to this one spot and get connected in the right way so that you can communicate with people all over the country. That in itself is the function of an altar, whether it be communication, impartation, or some form of engagement that's happening at this special site. This is what makes it a point of contact. So, what I want to talk about is some of the different altars, how they operate. And I even want to talk about the dangers, because many of us are suffering, not because God is cursing us, not because the devil is busy, so on and so forth. But what I want to address is the fact that many of us are participating in rituals and we're accessing altars out of ignorance. Therefore, we're tapping into things unintentionally for whatever reason we're doing so. So, first, let me address the fact that the body is a temple. Now, a temple in itself is an altar, it is a point of contact. In the Bible, when it mentions that heaven and earth shall pass away, it was not talking about the physical earth or the spiritual heavens that were going to be passing away at some point. It was talking about the temple, because the temple was seen pretty much as a building, but the building itself was an altar. It was a point of contact in which man and God could interact to some extent. Now, there were many within the temple, there were many altars within it. So a temple is an altar with a bunch of altars on the inside of it, meaning that there are many different points of contact depending on what you're trying to get from God. In the outer court, there were certain things that could be given in which people could receive certain benefits, certain blessings, certain rewards from God, and it was accessible to the public. This is why it was separated into degrees. You had your outer court, your inner court, and your innermost court, or your outer court, your holies, and your holy of holies. These were distinctions of how sacred different levels of the temple were in regards to who actually had access to what altars, who was gaining access to what things were being contacted with. It was regulating the points of contact, the altars within the altar. So it's simple to say that everything that you found in the outer court was pretty much accessible to everyone in the world. Everyone benefited from it. This is why much of what Yeshua imparted and commissioned his his disciples to be able to go out and do were things that you can actually access from the outer court. The ability to heal the sick. It's called salvation. In the Greek, it's the word sozo, which means to be healed, delivered, and set free. This was an empowerment. I often call salvation the government assistance of the kingdom, because you don't actually have to like God. You don't have to be on God's terms. You can be an enemy of God. You can hate God and still benefit from the rewards of salvation. Just like in America, you can absolutely hate President Obama and still be on Obamacare. Because it's something that is freely given for those that receive it. So this in itself puts you in a certain paradigm. Not only is there a function, there is a structure to how altars function within the temple, varying degrees of how sacred they are, who's actually able to access them, but that also puts into perspective our own identity as living altars, because you, as the actual temple of God, is the new heavens and the new earth that people have been prophesying that was going to come about. They were prophesying about you and your body being the new place in which God can actually invade the earth. Where the heaven touches earth, that's you. You're at the epicenter of that. That's what it means to be the temple. It's not just that you're the house of God, that is true, but it's also that you are the place where both of those worlds cross over. Now, paralleling your human body, your human experience to the actual layout of a physical temple, there are some things that remain true. There are multiple altars within a temple, as I just got done describing. There are some that exist in the outer court, some that exist in the inner, some that exist in the Holy of Holies, such as there is the brazen altar. This is the altar of fire that's out in the front, representing purification. This is the refiner's crucible. This really in itself represents deliverance, purification. There's a lavier of water. This is your baptism of water. There's a refreshing. There's a closing. There's a lot of things that's happening in the temple. But the both of those are in the outer court. That's all. The outer court is also the place where the manger was. The manger, the one place in the temple where the uh, Passover lamb was slain for the benefit of the community. You go into the inner court, you have the menorah, which acts as an altar, funneling in the essence of the seven spirits and Holy Spirit. You have the showbread, you have the altar of incense. This is another altar. All of these individual things, though they might not always be called altars, are still altars. Then you go into the Holy of Holies, you have the Ark of the Covenant. This is the altar of altars. This is the favorite altar. This is the seat, the abode, the throne of God itself, and the riches, the infinity riches of God housed in one place. Long story short, all of that is a part of you, but you have to learn how to navigate yourself as a temple in order to tap into all of those different things. So I want to talk about some of the altars, because if I was going to talk about all of them, I would be here all day. And I'm not trying to be here all day. But let's talk about some simple altars. I was having a conversation with Yeshua a few months back. I think it was October, might have been September. We were talking about altars. And he was telling me that the tongue is an altar, in that you can actually give offerings to God by what you're actually eating and drinking. That the diet that you maintain is a way of altering your frequency, altering your state of being, altering your consciousness, and enables you to be conducive to certain forces. There's different diets that people get on for different reasons. Follow me. I'm moving between metaphysics and regular science and spirituality. So stay with me. In the natural, people go through different diets when they want to get different results. Someone who's just trying to be strong, they eat certain foods, they work out in a certain way because they're going after a certain result, which means that there is a diet and there's a culture that matches the intended result. They talk about the alkaline diet, where you're learning how to cut down on acidic foods and you're trying to live in a level, because disease cannot live in an alkaline body. That's the idea that's the idea, at least. Well, there's some people who are going for the alkaline thing. There's some people who are going for a more cut and tone look. There's people who don't care about being bulky. There's people who don't care at all and just want to enjoy the food. And their bodies resemble the diet that they're taking on. And understand that diet isn't just the food that you're eating, it's the lifestyle that you're living. And it's that lifestyle that I'll call the ritual. So I'd say the ritual, because that is what I'm also talking about today. The ritual is what you do in order to engage the altar. It's the activation process of the altar. Now, sometimes, depending on the altar, all you have to do is build the altar most of the way, and it's legitimized in the spirit. That's a dangerous thing I'm going to come back to. So let's say I want to focus on, I want to draw in prosperity. I'm trying to focus on prosperity. I begin to learn the diet that will change my human radio self, because the human body is a tuning fork. It is a radio. It can be changed and tuned to interact with the world around it however it so chooses to do so. If I begin to change my diet, and I begin to change my thinking, and I begin to change my ritual, which is the things that I'm doing, right? My actual behavior, I can then change myself in such a way that I become a money magnet. This is also true with health. If I decide that I want to heal, there are certain things that I can do to my body, whether by eating or refusing to eat, because fasting is one of the best things you can do to heal your body and bring it into an optimized state. It's the refusal to eat. That is still working the altar, that is the tongue. When you refuse to eat, you're still engaged in that altar. It goes into self-managed mode. It starts to clean out the things on the inside that should not be there. When you're fasting, your body automatically goes into self-deliverance, because that's the way that the altar works. So fasting is a ritual dedicated to the altar of the tongue that helps to clean out the temple itself. The drinks that you drink. Do you notice that alcohol is also called spirits? This isn't just a witty name for it. In fact, to the ancient world, alcohol was strictly used for thousands of years for ritual use, not for recreational use, which means the intended purpose of alcoholic beverages was to access certain spirits and access certain states of consciousness. It later began to be used to feel good and to party and have a good time, but that wasn't its original use. Alcoholic beverages were used as a pathway to access different realms, different dimensions, and communicate with whatever God that drink was associated to. Now, you see this even mirrored in your Bible. Yeshua is known by a specific drink, wine. This isn't an excuse for, let's just say, recreational drinking. That's not what I'm advocating. I'm staying on topic in that you're invoking an altar, which is the tongue, by presenting a special offering to it, which is a drink. Now, we have this special ability that we can, as a whole, become an altar to whatever we choose to be an altar to, which means you're able to become a point of contact to whatever you want to release to the world around you and whatever you want to be funneled into your experience. That's an ability that you have innate to yourself. No one can revoke it from you. Which means if I hate you and I'm your enemy, I don't have to do you anything. I just have to convince you to participate in rituals that will actually harm you. Even better if I can get you to emotionally attach yourself to it, which means I can then expect you to do it on repeat, and I can expect you to pass on the custom. So now I have entire communities, entire nations suffering because they don't know that they're practicing a ritual. We're coming back to that. So another ritual, another altar I want to talk about. Well, before I switch over, I'll just say, whether you're engaging the Father, whether you're engaging Holy Spirit, whether you're engaging Yeshua, another member of the cloud of witnesses, someone else within the archetype of Elohim, because it is a family after all, different angels, whatever you're engaging, understand that there is a diet that comes with it. When I wanted to tap into the Christic dimension, when I wanted to really understand the entire dimension of Christhood, I went on a diet associated to Christhood, which was a vegetarian diet. I went on that for a bit. Small shots of wine, because I actually hate the taste of alcohol myself. It's not fun for me. But that was the ritual dedicated to Christhood. A vegetarian diet. Well, it's lacto-vegetarian, but vegetarian, with the beverage being water, fruit juice, still within that archetype, or the occasional sip of wine or beer, because that all fits within that same dimension. And that's when I really started, well, not really started, that's when I recently started having even more revelation concerning Christhood. I went through the full process of accessing that realm by invoking the altar that Yeshua just taught me about. And I can tell you it was uncomfortable for me because, like I said, I don't like alcohol. Not fun. Not a fan. But that's one of the things that I learned, is that pretty much any spirit, any entity that you want to get in contact with, or any force, because remember, the human body is a radio, it is a tuning fork. So it's not even about always engaging spirits. That's one of the things that I want to drive home when it comes to the idea of altars or the idea of rituals, is that they're not always used to invoke a spirit of any sort. Sometimes the altar can be used just to access a certain frequency, the frequency of prosperity, the frequency of health, the frequency of abundance, the frequency of community, right? Everyone is a byproduct of their ritual, which is your customs, which is your routines. A quote that I'm borrowing says that what you do frequently becomes your frequency. Whatever your frequency is the vibration that you are at that point. That's what you are, regardless of how you feel. Your frequency is what you are in the moment, and it's the message that you're given to creation around you. Pretty much the issue that we have in the world is that everyone is God, and creation is doing its best to obey God, and we're all sending mixed signals. So this is really the only democracy that works. It's the frequency that we maintain in masses decides pretty much the way that most of the world is going to go. So if I want to destroy the world, I don't necessarily have to do so by inciting a war. What I do is I get people to change their frequency to where they're only willing to accept the worst things, and they've now moved themselves out of the space where blessings are now repulsive. You ever heard of people who live their life in such a way that they're now allergic to water? They're allergic to vegetables, they're allergic to fruit, they're allergic to cooking their food. Anatomically, this is something that humans can do, but because they've shaped themselves and warped themselves in such a way, something as necessary for the human experience as water, they're allergic to. Which means, in the same way, you can make yourself allergic to the very thing that you actually want in your life. Many of us get tricked into becoming allergic to money. We're allergic to prosperity. We're allergic to success. We're allergic to health. We're allergic to blessings. Those are things that we've learned how to do because of the rituals that we've picked up from wherever we got them. Some of us got them from church. Some of us got them from family members, loved ones, trusted ones. Some people might have got it from a TV show. It might have been a joke you took too serious, but it became a part of your life. This is how you do things. Therefore, that's the frequency that you're maintaining. So whenever the topic of changing your life comes into effect, the question that immediately should be examined is, what am I doing that is creating this life that I apparently do not want? Because your ritual does not lie. You are an altar filled with altars. Your rituals do not lie. Your ritual is whatever you're doing to maintain the frequency that you're living in, which means if I don't like the TV station that I'm watching in the world, my job is to change my frequency, to change the station and begin to put better things out there. If I'm going to believe that this world, this universe is a hologram, it's holographic. That's what they call it. The holographic fractal universe. It's an illusion is what they call it. If it's going to be an illusion, I'd rather enjoy myself here. That means suffering is not necessary if it's an illusion, which means the suffering isn't the byproduct of God superseding our will to make us go through these trials. It's a direct result of the rituals that we've putting ourselves in, whether we recognize that we're doing them or not. I think I'm making sense a little bit. So that's the first level of examination, is what am I doing frequently that is maintaining this frequency that has me trapped in a life that I don't want to be in. Now, understand this. You can actually create your own rituals. You can create customs with an intent behind it, and as long as you keep it up, it will continue to produce that which you've put into it. I visited a prayer meeting recently, and that's something that I shared while I was there. Because a few nights ago, Yeshua, me and him were sitting in my office, and he was talking to me again about altars. And one of the things that he said to me was that your hands are altars. What he's saying is, remember, I've already defined altars. Your hands are points of contact for an exchange of energy, for an exchange of principles, for an exchange of information. This isn't a reason to be afraid. This is a reason to take what you're putting your hands on serious. This is one of the sciences behind the laying on of hands as a form of impartation. Every time you shake hands with someone, every time you touch something, you actually release and receive some form of energy and or impartation, and it's not something you can cut off. So what needs to happen is, if you're engaging the altar that is the hands, it actually becomes what you release, right? What you release becomes a byproduct of what you're encountering on a regular. I wrote in my book, one of the principles that I have regarding one of the organs of the spirit being the roots is that you receive wherever you are while releasing wherever you've been. So when you touch or you come in contact with someone, they're getting an update on where you've been and what you've encountered. Which means if you want to change the way that people react to you, you have to change what you're choosing to submerge yourself in. When somebody has been spending a lot of time in the presence of God, you can tell, because when they interact with you, you feel that same presence. You feel that same power, and you feel it to the degree that they've been in it. I'm from the South. I'm from the country, lived in the hood my whole life, right? Something that we heard a lot when we were kids, we'd go outside and we'd be playing all day, and we come back in the house. The older people, whether it's grandma, auntie, mom, cousin, whoever it is, would say, y'all need to go in there and take a bath, take a shower. Y'all smell like outside. In that moment, that where we were became the impartation to the place that we were visiting. When we came in, outside came in, and they didn't want outside in here. This is a part of the ritual, is that wherever you're spending most of your time is where you're receiving most of your impartation. So 5 minutes of prayer, 5 minutes of the presence isn't going to change too much if the rest of your time is spent in a place you hate, in a place that's detrimental to your growth and your success and your well-being. There is such a thing as having a place opposite of yourself so that you can learn to fight against the current and be greater in that which you're striving to be. That doesn't go away, but there is such a thing as being completely oppressed, suppressed, and distracted, and that's what most of us are in. So this is another ritual trap that people are in. Not only do they have you eating foods and drinking drinks, accessing certain spirits, accessing certain dimensions, accessing certain frequencies against your will. You think you're just having fun. But instead, you're rewriting the code of your body, rewriting your consciousness to access things that you don't even know you want. You haven't agreed consciously, but the ritual says this is what I want. So not only do they have you cursing yourself via the rituals by engaging the altar of the tongue, but your hands, or really just the idea of being wherever you are. See, the hands act as an outlet for the most part. Where you are and what you submerge yourself in, that actually becomes the main impartation that you're receiving. Every pore of your body, every hair on your body, every little pore is an antenna receiving the world around you, which means there's nothing wrong with being in the world and not of the world. The problem is when you're so far in the world that the world begins to change you. Now you're in the world as the world, and there's no difference between you and the world. And this isn't about how churchy you are, how religious you are or not, because religion is still of the world. That's just another distraction to keep you from your sonship. So let's talk about some more of these rituals, right? Sometimes the only thing that you need to do to begin to benefit is to go where God sent you originally. Go to the region that you know you're called to be in. Some of us are cursed, not because God is cursing us. It's just that the place that's blessed for you isn't where you're at right now. A Bible verse that people bring up a lot, it says that a prophet is without honor in its own home, meaning that oftentimes your home, the place where you grew up, your upbringing, your place of origin, for most people is not the place where you're actually meant to go out and benefit the world. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but let's just say some of you are called to different regions, and the reason you're not experiencing the fullness of who you're meant to be, even while trying to do what you know you're called to do, is because you're trying to do it in the wrong place. So that's a conversation for God. Where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be doing? Those are two things that could help change your life, is allowing the creator to give you the blueprint of what you were created to do, who you were created to be. Where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to be doing there? So let's talk about some of the rituals and the altars that people engage. Let's talk about Christmas. Y'all love holiday time, right? Let's talk about it. So this is something that I warn people about every year, but nobody listens to me. So people suffer the results of engaging in rituals and activating altars out of ignorance, just because it's the most wonderful time of the year. Christmas has absolutely nothing to do with the birth of the Savior. That is a different holiday called Feast of Tabernacles. In fact, them tying him to it is a way to get more of you to engage that altar, to engage in that ritual, which leads to your demise. And I watch it year after year. Mind you, I stopped celebrating Christmas before I knew all this stuff, just because my family we actually like each other, so we get each other gifts all year. So nothing special about December 25th, not for us at least. So people say, well, what if I just like trees? Nothing's wrong with liking trees. Nothing's wrong with evergreen trees. But when you're talking about the origin of Christmas, you're looking at 3 or 4 different rituals being added together to create this new ritual. And this is one of the most dangerous things. What happens is you start to activate pieces of altars, incorrectly doing rituals. If the ritual in itself was designed to bless you, let's say it was, if you're not doing it right, you don't get the intended blessing. This is something you read about in your Bible, where the sons of Aaron's got killed in the temple by the fire of the altar because they tried to offer up a different fire. Something as simple as offering the wrong fire got them killed. So Christmas, the main two holidays that they actually come from is the Yule Festival and Saturnalia. The Yule Festival has more to do with the winter solstice, and Saturnalia is more so just a winter celebration created by the Romans in celebration of the deity Saturn. Now, let me talk about ritual. So, a holiday isn't just a day of remembrance, right? Holidays typically come with rituals, they come with traditions. And those are the things that get people caught in the loop without them knowing that they're participating in rituals and sacrificing to an altar. So, if we're talking about Saturnalia, let's talk about some of the traditions, how they decorate and things like that. So, for Saturnalia, what they would do is they would ritually kill a pig, and that would become the feast. So there goes your holiday ham, right? Holiday ham. They would have a big feast, eating a bunch of pork. Um, they would do a gift exchange. Typically, it would be some form of an idol in the shape of a deity or something like that. But it was a gift. They gave each other gifts. Um, they would also kind of relax on their morality, meaning that they would do things that they wouldn't normally do. So this day was kind of treated as the one free pass to kind of do what you want. This day was kind of like the what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas day. So this is a day men would beat their wives, they would have orgies, they would do all types of crazy stuff. They'd get sloppy drunk, they'd fall over, they'd do all types of stuff on this one day during this festival. Eventually they started to like the festival and how loose and crazy it got so much they started to extend it. So it was originally one day, then it's 3 days, then it's a week, because they're really enjoying this one free moment to get to do what they want without any repercussions. They would often dress up, wearing masks and things like that. If we're talking about the decorations, they would decorate trees, they would decorate with branches, they would create wreaths, and they would create garlands in order to decorate their facilities. All of this is the ritual of Saturnalia. It's the eating of the food, it's the exchanging of the gifts, it's the moral looseness, it's the dressing up, wearing certain clothes. Um, Even the colors, right? They wore red and green. The colors that they decorated with were red and green. The special uh, plants that they would use outside of the wreaths and the garlands, they would use holly, fir, and ivy. You know, deck the halls with boughs of holly. That is a specific uh, type of plant that they used in Saturnalia to decorate with. Now, this is the ritual of Saturnalia. Sounds familiar. Regardless of how you try to Christianize someone else's ritual, if the ritual remains the same, the result remains the same, no matter what mascot you shifted with. So, what happened is when they swapped out Saturnalia with Christmas, they left all the rituals in place and put pretty much your savior there as a mascot to get you to participate in a ritual that actually helps to destroy you. I'm not done yet. Well, I mentioned there were two main ones, right? It's two I'm going to talk about. There's the Yule Festival. Now, we talk about the decorations of the Yule Festival. You have the garlands, you have the pine cones and cloves. Again, the colors red and green. You have mistletoe. Here goes your kissing under the mistletoe type of thing. Again, you have holly being used in decoration, the color white, the color silver. And they also decorate a tree that they know as the Yule tree. They had Yule logs, they had a Yule altar. And it was all about recognizing the end of the year was their idea. They were recognizing that one season was ending, they were getting ready to go into another, and it was a way of it was a preparation for them to get ready to receive a harvest. They would also eat pork, they would also eat cabbage, they would have their black-eyed peas. This is where we get that from for New Year's. So even New Year's has some of these same rituals as a part of it. This is why we have our pork. This is why we have our cabbage. This is why we have our black-eyed peas. And Understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying you going to hell. I'm not saying none of that. I'm not saying you're gonna be uh stopped from entering in the heavens. What I'm saying is that you are participating in a ritual. See, the reason that they would eat those things, it was a sign of a good harvest, and that was their way of it was kind of like a good luck charm for the next year. It was a way of blessing themselves to step into the new year. So I'm not even saying that these rituals are necessarily evil, that they're necessarily bad or anything like that. What I'm saying is you need to pay attention to what you're doing. Now, the decoration of the tree is something that's extremely old, much older than both the Romans and the Germanic peoples where Saturnalia and the Yule festival come from. Both of those holidays are relatively new, but they still have enough power behind them to do what they do. So, for the most part, these are some rituals that help a little bit. One of the deadlier ones, and this is one that actually ended up getting incorporated, is the decoration of the tree. You actually hear about the decoration of the tree in the Bible. I forget which book it is. But when they're talking about how they would take down the tree and they would decorate it with silver and gold and so on and so forth, this is an ancient Canaanite ritual. And you have to understand the Canaanites to understand the ritual itself. This was in dedication to Asherah. And they had a special type of altar that they would build to Asherah called an Asherah pole, which was more so kind of like a giant antenna, typically created out of precious metals. They would use it to kind of impart energy into the region. Now, what they would do with the tree, they would do so, and it's a very specific ritual that they had to do. I'll come back to this. Otherwise, it would backfire on them, where they had to wrap a tree and decorate it a very specific way in order to get their intended purpose. They had to use it at the right time of the year, and that was not winter. Typically, it would be in spring or fall. I mean, not spring or fall, it would be in spring or summer. Typically, they would take it down around fall so that it would not be up for winter, because they knew that pretty much what it does is it funnels in the energy of the season and releases it into the region around it. Well, winter is symbolized by death. This is where all the crops die. This is where the sun is obscured. This isn't the type of energy you want to funnel into your region. So this is what happens, right? I gave y'all three ancient, let's just say more ancient than we are right now, sources for where some of these rituals that we participate in yearly actually come from. Now, remember what I said earlier about what happens when you incorrectly set up an altar or you improperly perform a ritual? It leads to a detriment. So, because they've tricked you into thinking that December 25th and 4th have anything to do with your Savior, you participate in a ritual that actually funnels death into the region. Am I just being dramatic? No. Most of y'all were sick the week before and the 2 weeks after Christmas, pretty much around when you started decorating. And this happens every year on the dot. It's always the week before, first two, or the weeks following after. Period of, let's just say, yeah, week before, 2 weeks after Christmas. That's when you hear all the stories about everybody getting sick. And it's never a disease that people have ever heard of. They just say, oh, there's a bug going around. No, there isn't a bug going around. You're funneling death into your homes and you're unaware of it. You have an emotional attachment to a holiday and to a presentation to where you actually get defensive. Many of you are already defensive just hearing me say that you're killing yourselves by performing a ritual without understanding the makeup or even doing the ritual properly, right? It's not a condemnation, it's just education. You do with this what you will. But no, Christmas doesn't have anything to do with the birth of the Savior. That's Feast of Tabernacles 2 months before. Christmas, in a way, is a way for them to pretty much suck the rest of the life out of you that you have in you at the end of the year. And even the structure of our New Year's, because I want to talk about New Year's a little bit too. New Year's, as in December 31st, January 1st, the issue is not that the calendar is wrong per se. It is, but that's not the main detriment. I care about some other things a bit more. What happens is that every year for New Year's, you decide you want to take your life under control and you want to actually change some things about your life. You start to cast a vision, you start to try to implement some new things, some new culture, you try to change your rituals to possibly end up being better off at the end of the next year than you were at that moment, right? Hopefully, in a year, I'm better off than I was. So you start off with these New Year's resolutions. You start off uh, with affirmations. You start to speak into your future. You start to prophesy. This is my year. This is my year. This is a blessing. And while there's nothing wrong with affirmation, I wish more people did affirmation a lot more regularly. Don't miss me when I say this. This is the wrong time of year to try to change your life. You don't plant in the winter. This is a horrible time for gardening. So what happens to the seeds that you try to sow? They die. That's why it's almost comical at this point that everyone kind of knows that whatever New Year's resolution you have isn't really going to make it far into the new year. By week 3, most people have already given up on whatever it is that they set out. I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to eat better. Week 3, it's already destroyed. You're already not committed to whatever it was. And it's not that you were lying to yourself when you set up. You casted your vision. You sowed a seed at the wrong time. You have to know when to sow, when to cultivate, when to reap. You have to understand those things. And the winter is the wrong time to try to change your life. What you should do is wait till spring gets here, because spring is a great time to garden. This is actually when the calendar used to begin, April 1st. A lot of cultures start their year in spring because this is when life comes back to the world. But April 1st, the reason that it's called April Fools is that when they changed the calendar some time ago, they changed when the year began and they created April Fools kind of as a way to make fun of people who were still keeping the old calendar. Now we find out that the real fool is us. Has you casting your vision, trying to change your life at the wrong part of the year. You're trying to garden in the winter, wrong time. What that does is it crushes you. It crushes your soul. It puts you in a place where you almost get hopeless. Because what you remember is, I've been trying this year after year, and it just doesn't work. So it actually puts you in a state of depression. It chokes out your intent. You intended to do good. But because you were participating in a ritual and you didn't know the science of the rituals that you were participating in, they were able to trick you pretty much into setting yourself up for suicide. Killing your dreams, killing your visions, killing your hopes, killing your imagination, killing your creativity. Yeah. Leading to a depressed society. So again, I emphasize that most of what's wrong in the world is that most of us are participating in rituals and we're sacrificing and engaging altars without being aware of those altars. So again, this is a great conversation for you to have with God. What are some of the altars that I'm engaging wrong? What are some of the rituals that I'm participating in that are actually detrimental to me? What are some of the things that I find fun that are actually harming me? What are the things that I'm doing frequently that are messing up my frequency? Those are the questions that you need to bring back to God and get some clarity on, right? So, again, you as the temple are an altar of altars. You are a massive altar. You are the place where heaven touches earth. You don't actually have to go far to access heaven because heaven is wherever you are. It's your choice to access that reality yourself. Another topic. Within you are multiple ways to engage the heavens, multiple ways to engage the earth. And again, stop looking at altars and rituals as ways of worship or places of worship. You will miss them every time because altars and rituals are not always dedicated to gods or spirits. Sometimes it's about simply changing your frequency. Sometimes it's simply about changing your life, your consciousness. Sometimes it is about invoking a certain spirit, accessing an angel, certain things like that. Sometimes that is true. You have to go deeper than just deciding, is this an African custom? Oh, it must be witchcraft. Oh, is this a this culture? This must be witchcraft. No, you have to go beyond being racist towards other cultures and actually look at, is this a spirit that I want to actually be invoking? Is this a blessing? Is this something that I actually want in my life? And it's to that degree you make your own decisions. So yeah, that's kind of all I have for y'all today. I'm probably going to do a longer session of this on Patreon. So for those of you who aren't a part of the Patreon, patreon.com/cave of mystery, or you can just go through the website caveofmystery.org and find my Patreon there. Going to be doing a longer session, going over some of the more complex areas of operating with altars. But I'll give you this, right? I'll give you a few things that you can change right now that can begin to change the way that you engage the world. Solfeggio frequencies. Begin to soak and listen to those all the time. Simple way, right? Another thing, right? Fruits and vegetables, they are your friend. That's a simple thing to do. Affirmations. Talk to yourself and tell yourself what you are and what you will be and what you will do, and do that more than ever. Your affirmation is your prophecy to yourself that gives you the permission to be that. Those are some simple things that you can do. Accessing higher levels of wisdom, right? Talking about the spirit of wisdom, Sophia. Accessing Sophia, I'll give y'all that one for free. One of the ways to engage Sophia is by consuming turmeric or by consuming dairy products. So milk or buttermilk specifically. Butter is fine as well. But yeah, those are some of the simple ways to engage wisdom. So yeah, I know a bunch of different rituals. I know a bunch of different altars. I'm not doing that today, right? Y'all had me for about an hour. This has been fun. Um, Leave questions in the comment section down below. Let me know what other topics y'all would like for me to cover, and I'll get to that, right? We're in this together. I love y'all. Take care. Until next time, y'all be blessed.